Dad, is this the fancy house with the pool you said you're fixing? Nolan's small voice came from the backseat, his wide eyes glued to the iron gates slowly swinging open. Wes Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting up at the massive estate beyond the drive. Yeah, buddy, he said, trying to keep the weariness out of his voice. This is the one. The last few months had been brutal. Jobs dried up, bills piled up, and Wes was barely holding it together for Nolan. Pool repairs weren't his dream gig, but they kept food on the table. And this particular call, a last-minute emergency request, triple pay, he couldn't say no. A woman in a sleek black dress and sunglasses stepped out of the house as Wes parked his rusty pickup near the service entrance. She didn't wave, didn't smile. Just stood there, arms crossed, like she was evaluating him. Stay in the truck, okay? Wes told Nolan. Just for a bit, I'll be right back. The woman's heels clicked against the pavement as Wes approached. Mr. Carter, she asked, voice cool and clipped. That's me, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Pool trouble, she nodded toward the backyard. The heater's dead, I need it fixed today. I have guests arriving tonight. Wes followed her around the side of the house, trying not to stare at the huge stone patio, manicured hedges, or the pool that looked more like a luxury resort than anything he'd ever worked on. I'll get started, he said, kneeling beside the control panel. I'm Wren, she said abruptly, catching him off guard. Wren Whitmore. Her name felt vaguely familiar, but it wasn't until she stepped back inside that it hit him. Whitmore Tech, the billboards, the magazine covers in checkout lanes, holy hell. He was fixing the pool of the CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the country. Wes shook his head and refocused on the job. Rich or not, a busted heater was a busted heater. 2 hours later, he was elbow-deep in wires and cursing under his breath when a small voice chirped behind him. Dad, can I get out now? Wes turned fast. Nolan, I told you to stay in the truck. Wait, did you walk around the whole house? I saw a bunny. Nolan grinned. Before Wes could respond, Wren was suddenly there, her sunglasses gone now, revealing sharp gray eyes that softened just slightly when she looked at Nolan. You didn't say you had a kid, she said. Yeah, sorry. I usually don't bring him with me, but his sitter canceled last minute. Wes stood awkwardly, brushing dirt from his hands. He's quiet, won't be any problem. Wren knelt to Nolan's level. What's your name, Nolan? He said. I'm 6. Well, 6.5, Wren smiled. It was brief, but real. You hungry, Nolan? Wes blinked. No, he's fine. I was gonna see if you wanted a snack, Nolan interrupted. Do you have goldfish? Wes groaned internally, but Wren just nodded. Come on, let's see what we can find. To Wes's shock, she took Nolan's hand and led him back into the house. He finished up the repair in record time, partially because he was anxious about his son wandering through a stranger's mansion. But when he stepped inside to retrieve him, he found Nolan sitting at a marble island, happily munching crackers while Wren poured him juice. I replaced the board and recalibrated the system, Wes said, clearing his throat. It's good to go. Wren glanced up. And your invoice? Oh, yeah, I'll email it. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. I prefer to pay right away. She wrote quickly, tore off the check, and handed it to him. Wes didn't look at the amount until they were back in the truck, his breath caught. It was double what he'd quoted. 2 days later, Wes was elbow-deep in another job when his phone buzzed. Unknown number, he almost ignored it. This is Wes, Mr. Carter, it's Wren Whitmore. He nearly dropped his wrench. I have another issue with the pool. Can you come today? He hesitated. I'm finishing up a job, but I could be there by 5. Perfect. This time, Wren met him at the door. In jeans and a loose blouse, she looked different, less polished, more real. I checked the heater, it's fine, but the lights keep flickering. Wes crouched by the control panel again, glancing up. You sure this isn't just an excuse to get your pool guy back? Wren blinked at him. Wes cursed under his breath. Sorry, that was dumb, never mind. But to his surprise, Wren laughed. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh, and it changed everything. Her eyes crinkled, her face lit up. I don't usually chase pool guys, she said, but I might make an exception. Wes blinked. What? She tilted her head. You're not like anyone I've met. He stood slowly, their eyes meeting across the patio. I'm a single dad who fixes things and sleeps 4 hours a night. I'm not exactly date material. You think I care about that, she said. He stepped closer. Maybe you should. I don't. Wes stared at her, unsure what to do with this woman who lived in a mansion but was looking at him like he was the one who intimidated her. Then Nolan came darting around the corner. Dad, she has a home theater and popcorn? Wren raised a brow. He asked to stay. I said yes, Wes exhaled. You're something else, she smiled. Is that a good thing? I don't know yet, he said, but I'm starting to think maybe. By the fourth visit, Nolan was already calling it Miss Wren's house. Wren started coming out just to talk while Wes worked. They sat on patio chairs, drank iced tea, and talked about everything from childhood dreams to what it meant to own a billion-dollar company, which she finally admitted to casually, like it was nothing. And Wes, he didn't feel invisible anymore. Late one evening, after Nolan had fallen asleep curled up on the couch inside, Wes found Wren waiting by the pool barefoot, holding 2 glasses of wine. I don't do this, she said, handing him one. Do what? Let people in. He took the wine. I don't either. They stood there quiet, the pool lights casting a soft blue glow. Finally, Wes said, Why me? Wren looked at him, eyes steady. Because you make me feel like I'm still human, not just a CEO, not just a name. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You are. And when she leaned in, he didn't hesitate. Their first kiss was slow. Honest. Like 2 people who didn't expect to find this but couldn't ignore it anymore. Neither of them saw Nolan watching from the hallway, a sleepy smile spreading across his face. Finally, he whispered to himself. Wes adjusted the strap of Nolan's backpack as they stood on the front steps of the elementary school. The morning air was thick with the scent of wet pavement and fresh mulch from the landscaping crews. Nolan bounced on his toes, excitement buzzing through him. Don't forget, today's the puppet show, he said, clutching his lunchbox. And I'm the fox. Wes gave a half smile. I remember, I'll be there before it starts. You always say that, Nolan muttered. Wes crouched down. And when have I missed something you were in? Nolan paused, thinking. That one time in pre-K. That was because of the flat tire and the raccoon. One time, I'll be there. As Nolan disappeared through the double doors, Wes exhaled and turned back toward his truck. A message had come through earlier from Wren, something about a new issue with the patio lights. She hadn't given details, just asked if he could stop by. He pulled up to the estate an hour later, already rehearsing possible wiring problems in his head. But when he stepped out of the truck, he saw her in the garden, kneeling by a cluster of white roses, her hands dirtied from tending the soil. You called me for lights, he said, walking over. She didn't look up. I lied. That stopped him short. Okay, she sat back on her heels and brushed her palms off on her jeans. I wanted to ask you something. But I didn't know how to do it without making it weird. You could just ask. I need a guest for the Whitmore Foundation Gala next weekend. He blinked. That's black tie, right? She stood, brushing the dirt from her knees. It is, and yes, I know you don't own a tux. That wasn't the question. Then what was? I want you to go with me. He crossed his arms. Why? Wren walked past him toward the house, calling over her shoulder. Because I want to see what happens when you walk into a ballroom full of men with private jets and still manage to be the most honest person in the room. He followed her inside, the cool marble floor clicking under his boots. You think I'd fit in at something like that? No, she said. I think you'd stand out, and that's exactly why I want you there. Wes rubbed a hand over the back of his neck. And if I say yes, you realize I'd need to figure out childcare, rent a tux, not spill anything on myself. I'll handle the tux, she said. And Nolan can stay here. My housekeeper's daughter is certified in early childhood care. She's watched my godchildren before. I trust her. He stared at her. You've thought this through? I have. He hesitated, then gave a slow nod. All right, I'll go. Good, she said, her gaze holding his. Because I already told the press I'd be bringing someone. Later that week, Wes found himself standing in front of a tailor's mirror in Midtown, the jacket snug across his shoulders, the crisp shirt oddly foreign against his skin. He turned to the woman pinning the cuffs. You sure this doesn't look ridiculous? You look like someone who belongs on a red carpet, she replied without glancing up. Wren stepped out from a side dressing room just as the tailor finished the final pin. Her hair was up, her gown a sleek navy that caught the light like moonlit waves. She examined him in the mirror, her expression unreadable. Say something, he muttered. You clean up well. He turned toward her. You still sure about this? Wren reached out and adjusted his bow tie slightly. "You'll be fine, just don't punch anyone." Wes gave her a look. "Is that something I'm likely to need to do?" "You'd be surprised." The night of the gala arrived with sudden nerves and too much cologne. Nolan had fallen asleep 2 stories up in a guest room, and Wes had checked on him 3 times before Wren finally pulled him out the front door and into a waiting car. The venue was already glowing by the time they arrived, the building lit from within like a palace. Paparazzi lined the entrance, flashes bursting like fireworks. Wes hesitated at the edge of the carpet. Wren leaned in. "You walk with me, just keep your eyes ahead." "Easy for you to say, you've done this before." "Exactly, so trust me." They stepped out together. The cameras went wild. Someone shouted Wren's name, then another, and then someone asked, "Who's the guy?" She didn't answer, just looped her arm through his and kept walking. Inside, chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters floated by with trays of champagne. Wes tried not to gawk, but it was like stepping into another planet. A man in a tailored navy suit approached them, his smile practiced. "Wren, I didn't realize you were bringing a guest. I would have sent an extra place card." "This is Wes Carter," she said. "He's with me." The man extended a hand. "Julian Royce, CFO." Wes shook it, eyes narrowing slightly. "Nice to meet you." Julian glanced at Wren, then back at Wes. "And what do you do?" "I fix things," Wes said simply. Julian's smile didn't falter, but his eyes cooled. "Ah, well. Enjoy the evening." As he walked away, Wes leaned toward Wren. "That guy doesn't like me. He doesn't like anyone he can't manipulate." They made it through dinner without incident, though Wes barely touched the food. Too many forks, too many eyes. But Wren kept her hand on his knee beneath the table, grounding him. Afterward, they slipped out onto a terrace where the city stretched out below them in glittering silence. "You sure I didn't embarrass you tonight?" he asked. "Not once," she said. He looked at her. "You know they all think you're slumming it. I don't care what they think, you should." "Why?" "Because I don't belong in your world, Wren." She stepped closer. "That's funny, because you're the only one here who feels real." Her hand brushed against his, then laced through his fingers. And just like that, the noise of the city faded. The clinking glasses, the murmured rumors, the judgmental looks, they all vanished. Wes leaned in, his voice low. "You're not afraid of what this means, are you?" "I'm terrified," she whispered, "but I want it anyway." He kissed her again. Firmer this time, not hesitant, not questioning, and somewhere deep inside, something shifted. Not with a bang, but with the quiet certainty of a door finally opening. Wes adjusted the strap of his tool bag as he stepped into Wren's foyer, rain dripping from the edge of his jacket. The storm outside had rolled in fast, and the sky beyond the tall windows was a wash of silver and gray. He hadn't been scheduled to come by, but Wren had called that morning asking if he could check on a leak in the guest bathroom. "I thought you said this house was indestructible," he said as Wren appeared at the top of the staircase, barefoot, her hair damp from a recent shower. "Even indestructible things crack under pressure," she replied, descending with a towel still in hand. He followed her through the hallway, his boots squeaking faintly against the polished floor. "Water's coming through the ceiling above the tub," she said, leading him down a corridor he hadn't been through before. "I had a plumber in last week, but he swore nothing was wrong." Wes knelt beside the vanity, inspecting the damp patch near the ceiling molding. "He probably didn't check the attic venting. I'll get up there." "Do you need help?" she asked, leaning against the doorway. "You keep a ladder in this palace. Garage, left wall, next to the snow tires I've never used." He grinned without looking up. "Be right back." By the time he'd returned and climbed into the cramped attic space, the rain had intensified. Water tapped steadily along the roof above, as Wes traced the leak to a clogged ventilation line that should have been rerouted years ago. "Got it," he called down. "You've got condensation building up from poor airflow. I'll rerun the ductwork outside the joist. It'll stop the leak." "Should I pretend to know what that means?" "Only if you want me to start talking about damper screws and R-value insulation." She laughed, and the sound traveled up through the attic like warmth. After sealing the vent and laying down temporary insulation, Wes climbed down and found her waiting with 2 mugs in hand, steam curling from each. "I made hot chocolate," she said. "Figured you'd need warming up." You really think hot chocolate's gonna fix the fact that I'm soaked through and smell like attic insulation? She handed him a mug. It's Belgian dark with sea salt. He took a sip, eyebrows lifting. Okay. That's unfairly good. They moved into the living room where the fireplace crackled softly. Wes settled into the corner of the wide cream sofa, his boots off and jacket slung across the back of a nearby chair. Wren pulled her legs beneath her and tucked a blanket over her lap. Do you ever stop? He asked, watching her sip her drink. Stop what? Planning, managing, being 5 steps ahead of everyone in the room. She tilted her head. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's just exhausting to watch, she smiled faintly. It's exhausting to live. Wes took another sip, then leaned back. So why do it? Because if I don't, everything falls apart. He looked at her. That ever actually happen, things falling apart, her eyes flicked to the fire. When my father died, the board tried to push me out. Said 26 was too young to run a billion-dollar company. I had to fight for every inch of ground I stood on. Wes let the silence stretch before he spoke. You don't have to fight with me. I know, she said, her voice low. The sound of small feet on the stairs interrupted the quiet. Nolan peeked around the corner, rubbing one eye. I heard thunder, he said. Wren stood and crossed to him. Come here. He padded into the room and crawled up beside her on the couch. She handed him the other half of her blanket without hesitating. Can we read tonight? He asked. Wes opened his mouth to say they should get going, but Wren was already nodding. I've got a book you haven't heard yet, she said. It's about a dog who thinks it's a cat, Nolan grinned. That sounds weird. It is. Wes watched them, something tightening in his chest. A part of him wanted to pull Nolan away, remind him that this wasn't permanent, but another part, deeper and harder to silence, didn't want the moment to end. After the story, Nolan curled up under the blanket and drifted off. Wren stood, gently lifted him into her arms and carried him up the stairs without a word. Wes waited in the living room, staring into the fire until she returned. He's out cold, she said, sitting beside him again. I should take him home. He's fine. Let him sleep. A pause stretched between them. You ever think about what this is? He asked. She looked at him. All the time, and I don't have an answer, I just know I want it. He turned to face her fully. I'm not the kind of man who belongs in a house like this, Wren. Maybe the problem is you think this house defines me, Wes exhaled. I want to believe this is real. Her eyes didn't leave his. Then believe it. He leaned in, their mouths meeting again, slower this time. Not born of urgency, but of something deeper, something that had grown in the quiet moments, in the shared glances and late-night talks, and the way Nolan had started reaching for her hand without thinking. When they pulled apart, Wren rested her forehead against his. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, but I don't want to stop. Then don't. They stayed like that for a long time, the fire dwindling to embers behind them. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that something had changed tonight, that this was no longer just a spark. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, and neither of them was ready to let go. The rain had passed, leaving the city washed clean in soft morning light. Wes stood on the edge of the rooftop garden atop Wren's estate, hands in his pockets, the skyline stretching before him in sharp glass and steel. Below, the city churned toward another weekday, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. Behind him, the sliding door opened. I didn't know you were up here, Wren said, stepping barefoot onto the stone tiles, her voice still husky with sleep. You left the bed like a ghost. I needed air, Wes replied, not turning around. She crossed the space between them, stopping at his side. What's going on? He glanced at her, then back at the horizon. I got a call this morning, a contracting firm in Vermont. They saw some of the work I did here. They offered me a job, full-time, project lead. Wren's features stayed unreadable. He continued, they want me to relocate. Benefits. A real salary. I could finally give Nolan the kind of stability he deserves. Her voice was calm. So you're saying goodbye. I'm saying I have to consider what's right for my son. He met her eyes. This what we have, it's real. But it's built on borrowed time. Wren nodded once, then turned and walked to the edge of the garden, her arms folding tightly across her chest. You didn't think to talk to me before deciding something like this? I haven't decided anything. That's why I'm telling you. She took a breath, then faced him. "I want you to stay. I know," he said gently. "But wanting and doing are different things, and I can't be the man who makes decisions based on what feels good in the moment." Her voice cracked slightly. "So that's all this has been." "A moment? No," he said quickly. "It's been everything I never thought I'd find again." Wren stepped forward, her jaw tight. "Then fight for it." "I'm trying," he said, his voice rough. "But I've got a kid who's already changed schools twice in 3 years. Who watches the door every time I'm late picking him up. I can't drag him through another chapter unless I know it's one I can finish." Wren looked at him for a long time, then finally said, "I've been working on something. A new division of the Foundation focused on community housing initiatives. I was going to unveil it next quarter, but maybe this is the right time." Wes frowned. "What does that have to do with? I want you to run it," she said. "Design the builds, lead the teams, stay here with Nolan with me." He stared at her. "You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a life," she said, "but only if you want it." Wes shook his head slowly. "You can't just create a job for me out of thin air." "I didn't," she said. "I spent the last 2 weeks restructuring the Foundation's outreach. I'd hoped you'd say yes before I ever had to show you the paperwork. But now, you already planned this." His voice was soft. "I planned it because I love you," she said, stepping closer. "Because I've watched you build a life out of nothing. Because you're the kind of man people follow, trust, believe in. And I don't want to spend another day pretending that you're not the best thing that's ever walked into this house." Wes blinked hard. "You love me." "Yes," he swallowed. "Say it again." "I love you," she whispered. He reached for her, pulled her in, and kissed her like the answer had been waiting in her mouth all along. The tension broke like glass underfoot, sharp and clean. When he pulled back, his voice was hoarse. "I don't want to go to Vermont." "Then don't. I want to stay here." "With you?" "Then do." They stood wrapped in each other as the sun crept higher, and for the first time in years, Wes felt the weight in his chest shift into something lighter. Later that afternoon, Wren called the Foundation board into an unscheduled meeting. Wes, dressed in the only blazer he owned, stood beside her as she laid out the expansion plan, her voice calm and precise. The board members murmured, took notes, and nodded. No one questioned her, not this time. Afterward, as they returned to the estate, Nolan rushed down the walkway from the house, arms wide. "Dad, Miss Wren showed me how to make dumplings. I folded one like a turtle." Wes crouched as Nolan barreled into his arms. "That's impressive, buddy. And she said we're gonna build houses together." Nolan looked up at them. "Does that mean we're a team now?" Wes looked at Wren. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Yeah," Wes said. "We're a team now." 3 weeks later, Wren stood beside Wes on a wooden platform overlooking the first new build site, hard hats on, blueprints spread across a folding table. Cameras clicked. Reporters jotted notes. The Foundation's newest initiative was officially live, and Wes Carter, former pool repairman, full-time father, and current director of community development, was at the helm. That night, they celebrated on the rooftop beneath a canopy of string lights and laughter. Friends, colleagues, and Foundation partners filled the space. Nolan danced with Wren beneath the stars, spinning wildly as music drifted from the speakers. When the crowd thinned, Wes pulled Wren aside near the edge of the garden. "I've been thinking," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. She raised an eyebrow. "About," he held up a small velvet box her breath caught. "I can't offer you anything you don't already have," he said. "But I can give you this me, all of me, for as long as you'll have it." She opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, white gold, a single diamond, elegant and quiet. "Yes," she said without hesitation. He slipped it onto her finger, and she rose onto her toes, kissing him like the rest of the world had melted away. When Nolan saw them, he shouted, "Are you getting married?" Wes laughed. "Looks that way, champ." "Do I get a new room?" "You get to help design it," Wren said. Nolan pumped a fist in the air and darted off to tell the DJ. Wes turned back to her. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." And as the music swelled and the lights shimmered around them, Wes kissed the woman who had changed everything. Not because of the mansion, not because of the job, but because she'd seen him when no one else had and loved him anyway. It wasn't just a new beginning. It was finally home. Wes stood at the back of the event tent, watching Wren work the room with the kind of quiet command he'd come to recognize as her natural state. Her silk dress was deep emerald green, sleeveless and cinched at the waist, and she moved easily among the donors and community leaders gathered for the ribbon cutting of the new housing development their foundation had just completed. He hadn't seen her like this before, not in the press, not in boardrooms, but here, with the people their work would help. She wasn't playing a role. She was simply herself, intuitive, sharp, and deeply present in a way that made every person she spoke with feel like the only one in the world. Wes adjusted his cuff and stepped outside for air, the late spring breeze brushing through his hair. Beyond the hill, 6 new homes stood in a neat row, each with a cheerful porch and young trees already planted in their front lawns. Kids ran across the grass with paper streamers, and somewhere behind him, a jazz trio played under a string of lights. He didn't hear the footsteps until Wren's hand slid into his. "I was wondering where you disappeared to. Just needed a second." "You're kind of incredible in there. Only in there," she teased. He turned, brushing a lock of her hair that had caught in the wind. "Everywhere." She leaned her shoulder into his. "They're going to move in next week." "All 6 families, I know. I met the parents of the boy who'll be in the corner house. He's 7, has a stutter, but apparently he's obsessed with building things. I told him you'd come by and show him how to use a tape measure." Wes smiled, but it faded after a beat. "I've been thinking about something." Wren stepped back, reading his tone instantly. "What is it?" "Not bad, just important. I want to make this official. We're already engaged. I mean legally official for Nolan." Her brows lifted slightly, and he continued. "I talked to a lawyer. Asked what it would take to make sure if something ever happened to me, Nolan would stay with you. That you'd have the right to make decisions for him, be part of every moment. Not just as the woman I love, but as his family." Wren's lips parted, but no words came. "I know it's a lot," he said. "But you already act like his mother, and he loves you. That boy worships the ground you walk on." He even asked if we could get a family nameplate for the front of the house. She swallowed hard, voice unsteady. "He said that last week. Said he wants people to know it's our home, not just his and mine." "I want it too," she whispered. "All of it, every piece of him, every piece of you." They stood quietly for a moment as the music filtered outside. The sun had begun to set, casting the sky in muted golds and rose. "I'm not good with speeches," Wes said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "But I wrote something for tonight. I was supposed to read it inside, but I think it's better here." He unfolded the page, glancing down once before locking eyes with her. "I used to think love was luck. That it happened to people who had time or money or space in their lives. I didn't have any of those things. I had a truck that barely ran, a kid who needed more than I could give him, and days that started before dawn and ended after dinner. And then I met you, and everything changed. You didn't rescue me. You didn't try to fix me. You saw me. And that was more than anyone had done in a long time." He paused, voice roughening. "You gave me back pieces of myself I didn't even realize I'd lost. And you gave Nolan something I could never give him alone, a family that feels whole and safe and rooted. I love you, Wren Whitmore. Not because of what you have, but because of who you are when no one's looking. Because of the way you hold my son's hand when he's scared. Because of the way you challenge me to be more, every day. And because you make me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She stepped into him, sliding her arms around his waist, her cheek pressed to his chest. "I want to marry you tomorrow," she whispered. "I was thinking tonight." They laughed quietly, and Wren pulled back, eyes shining. "Let's do it. I'm tired of waiting." "I've got Nolan's suit in the truck," Wes said, "and you own a mansion. I think we can pull something off." An hour later, under twinkling lights strung across the rooftop garden, Wes and Wren stood before a small crowd of friends, foundation staff, and a sleepy but proud Nolan holding a pillow with 2 simple gold rings tied around it. The officiant, a retired judge from the board, kept the ceremony short. Wren's eyes never left Wes's. Nolan stood between them, beaming. And when the words were spoken and the rings exchanged, there was no applause, just a soft hush, the kind of quiet that comes when something sacred has just taken place. That night, after the guests had gone and the cleanup had faded into background noise, Wes carried Nolan upstairs and tucked him into bed. Wren stood in the doorway, barefoot, her wedding dress slung over one arm, her hair already loose and damp from a quick shower. "He made it through the whole thing," she said softly. "He was determined," Wes replied, brushing Nolan's hair back gently. They stepped into the hallway, and Wes shut the door behind them. "You ready for forever?" he asked. "I already started," she said. They returned to the master suite, where candles flickered low against the walls and the windows stood open to let in the scent of spring rain. Wes pulled Wren close, his mouth brushing her collarbone. "This is ours now," he whispered. "All of it." She wrapped her arms around his neck, her voice steady. "Then let's make it count." Years passed, the foundation expanded, funding builds across 3 states. Nolan grew taller, started middle school, and learned to cook ravioli from scratch. Wes taught him how to use a bandsaw. Wren taught him how to negotiate a contract. Their house bloomed with life. Weekends filled with pancake mornings and lazy movie nights. They traveled when school allowed, one summer in Italy, one Christmas in Vermont. Nolan insisted on bringing home a dog from a rescue trip. Wren named her Maple. And every night, without fail, Wes reached for Wren in the dark, pulled her close, and kissed her like they had just met. Because they had built something no storm could shake, not luck, not a moment, but a life, together. Always.